The rain had started before sunrise, falling slow and steady across the wide Texas land. Each drop hit the tin roof of Ethan Cole's small ranch house with a sharp sound that filled the empty rooms. The air was cold and the smell of wet earth mixed with the scent of old coffee. Ethan sat near the window, his weathered hands wrapped around a chipped mug. Outside, the land stretched far into the distance, grass, mud, and fences fading into mist. There was beauty in it, but also silence, the kind that presses against a man's chest until he learns to live with it. Ethan was a man who had spent most of his life alone. His beard had turned gray, his back had grown stiff, and his eyes carried the calm of someone who had stopped expecting change. He woke every morning before the sun, fed his horses, fixed what needed fixing, and went to bed when the moon climbed high. It was a quiet life, but also an empty one. He had once dreamed of raising a family here. His father had built this ranch with that hope. But life had chosen another road. His parents had passed years ago, and the woman he once loved had moved to another town. Friends faded away one by one until the only things left were the land, the animals, and the echo of his own footsteps. That morning he listened to the rain and thought of those years. The sound was the same as always, yet it felt heavier somehow. He pushed away from the table and went to check the barn. The path was slippery. Mud stuck to his boots as he crossed the yard. He fixed a loose latch, checked the feed, and spoke softly to his horses. Old habits that filled the silence. When he turned to walk back, he noticed something strange near the gate. At first it looked like a shadow, barely visible through the rain. Then it moved. He squinted, wiping water from his face. It was a person, small, thin, standing still in the storm. As Ethan moved closer, he realized it was a young woman. She was soaked from head to toe, her hair plastered to her cheeks, her jacket torn at the shoulder. She clutched a bag that looked far too light for traveling in this weather. Ethan opened the gate quickly. "Ma'am, you can't stand out here like this," he said, his voice rough but kind. "Come inside before the storm gets worse." The girl looked at him uncertainly, shivering hard. "I'm sorry," she said through chattering teeth. "My car stopped a mile back. I didn't know where else to go." "Don't worry about that," Ethan said. "You did right coming here." He led her up the porch and opened the door. The warmth of the fire met the smell of rain. She stepped inside slowly, dripping water on the wooden floor. Ethan grabbed a towel and handed it to her. "Sit down. You look near frozen." "Thank you," she whispered. He moved to the fireplace, tossed a few more logs into the flames, and filled a kettle with water. The girl sat near the fire, rubbing her hands together, eyes following him with quiet curiosity. When the tea was ready, Ethan brought her a cup and sat across from her. "My name's Ethan Cole," he said. "This old place belongs to me." She nodded and gave a small smile. "I'm Maya. I'm on my way to my aunt's house. I thought I could make it before the rain started, but then my car broke down. I walked for a while until I saw your gate." Ethan studied her face. She couldn't have been more than 22 or 23. Her eyes were tired but gentle, her voice polite. Something about her reminded him of his own niece he hadn't seen in years. "You're safe here," he said. "There's a spare room down the hall. You can dry off and rest a while." She looked surprised. "I don't want to bother you." Ethan shook his head. "You're no bother. A person shouldn't be alone in weather like this." He found an old blanket from the closet, along with a flannel shirt and jeans that might fit her. When she disappeared into the guest room, Ethan returned to the fireplace, staring at the dancing light. The house, usually so quiet, felt different now. He could hear the soft steps of another person, the gentle closing of a door. It was strange how quickly warmth returned to a place once empty. Maya came back wearing the dry clothes. They were too big for her, but she didn't seem to mind. "These are comfortable," she said, smiling shyly. Ethan nodded. "They belong to my nephew. Haven't seen him in a long time either." She sat near the fire again. "Do you live here all by yourself?" "For a long time now," Ethan answered. "It's not so bad. The land keeps me busy." She looked around the small room, the shelves filled with old photos, the boots by the door, the half-finished wood carving on the table. Everything spoke of a man who worked hard but didn't talk much. "It's peaceful here," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "That's one word for it." As the rain continued outside, they talked. It had been years since Ethan had talked this much. He told her about the horses, the seasons, and how winters could turn cruel in the valley. She told him about her college studies, her love for animals, and how she had always dreamed of working somewhere close to nature. The conversation flowed easily like a river breaking through long dry land. After a while, Maya yawned, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I didn't sleep much last night." "Go get some rest," Ethan said. "You'll feel better after some sleep." She nodded and walked down the hallway. When her door closed, Ethan sat there listening to the rain again. It no longer sounded like loneliness, it sounded like company. He stared into the flames, remembering how long it had been since he'd shared his home with another person. Later that night, he went outside one last time to check the gate. The rain had softened into mist. The sky glowed faintly with hidden moonlight. Ethan looked toward the road where she had come from. It felt strange that fate had sent someone right to his doorstep after all these quiet years. When he returned inside, he paused near the guest room. Through the thin wall, he could hear the slow, even breathing of someone asleep. It filled the house with a kind of peace he hadn't known in a long time. He smiled to himself before heading to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. He lay awake thinking about her, how lost she must have felt walking alone through the storm, how brave she had been to keep going. He thought about his own younger days when he still believed in unexpected kindness, when strangers could still surprise him. Around midnight, the storm faded completely. The world outside grew still, except for the soft ticking of the clock. Ethan rose and looked out the window. The ranch glistened under the faint light of the moon, and somewhere in the barn one of the horses gave a low whinny. It was a simple sound, but somehow it made him feel alive again. He sat down by the fire once more, letting its warmth wrap around him. On the table beside him lay Maya's damp bag. She had left it there to dry. A few papers stuck out, one of them a photo of her with an older woman who must have been her aunt. They were smiling, sunlight behind them. Ethan turned the photo over and saw a small note written in neat handwriting. "For when you forget where you belong." He placed it back carefully, feeling something stir deep inside. A quiet reminder that people still carried hope with them, even when lost. As dawn approached, light crept through the windows, painting soft gold on the wooden walls. Ethan finally dozed off in his chair, the crackle of the fire fading into the hum of morning. When he woke, the storm was gone. Birds were singing again, and a faint smell of coffee filled the kitchen. He walked in to find Maya trying to make breakfast, her hair tied up, her sleeves rolled. She looked up with a sheepish smile. "Good morning. I hope you don't mind. I found the coffee tin." Ethan chuckled quietly. "Not at all. Smells better than what I usually make." For the first time in years, he felt something bright inside him, something simple but strong. It wasn't love yet, and it wasn't joy exactly. It was life returning to a place that had almost forgotten how to feel. The rancher who thought he would die alone now had a guest under his roof. And though he didn't know it yet, that single night of rain had already changed everything. Morning light spread gently across the open fields, touching the wet fences and glistening grass. The storm had left the land clean and shining, like it had washed away not only the dirt but the quiet sadness that lived there. Ethan stepped outside, breathing in the cool air. The sound of birds echoed softly, and for the first time in years, the ranch didn't feel empty. Inside, he could hear clinking from the kitchen. When he walked in, Maya was there, trying to make breakfast. She looked smaller than before, standing on her toes to reach a pan from the shelf. Her hair was tied up, and she was humming something quietly under her breath. The sight made Ethan smile, a gentle, surprised kind of smile he hadn't worn in a long time. "You're up early," he said. She turned, startled, then laughed softly. "I was going to surprise you with breakfast, but I couldn't find the eggs." Ethan chuckled. "You mean the ones in the basket right behind you?" Maya groaned and covered her face. "I should have known." He helped her cook, guiding her through the old stove's stubborn ways. The smell of frying eggs and coffee soon filled the house, pushing away the scent of rain. When they sat down to eat, Maya looked out the window and sighed. "It's beautiful here. Peaceful. I don't think I've ever seen land stretch this far." Ethan nodded slowly. "That's what I like about it. The quiet, though some days it gets a bit too quiet." Maya looked at him with gentle understanding. "It must be lonely sometimes." He didn't answer right away. His eyes went to the fields where 2 horses grazed near the fence. "It used to be harder. I got used to it, I guess, until you showed up." She blushed a little. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You didn't," he said quickly. "It's nice having someone around again." After breakfast, Ethan offered to help her fix her car. They took his old truck down the muddy road until they reached the small sedan that had stopped near the ditch. It was still covered in dried leaves and wet mud. Ethan crouched to check under the hood, his hands working with quiet skill. Maya stood beside him, holding the umbrella. "You really know what you're doing," she said, watching curiously. "Been fixing machines all my life," he said. "Tractors, fences, you name it." He found the problem, a broken belt, and replaced it with one from his barn. When the engine roared back to life, Maya cheered and clapped her hands like a child. "You're amazing," she said. Ethan laughed. "Just old, not amazing." They drove back to the ranch to wash the mud from their clothes. The sky was bright now, the land sparkling after the rain. While Ethan cleaned his boots on the porch, Maya walked around the property, touching the wooden fence and talking softly to the horses. One of them, a gentle gray mare, nuzzled her hand. "She likes you," Ethan said, leaning against the post. "I think I like her too," Maya replied. "What's her name?" "Grace," he said. "Had her since she was born," Maya smiled. "She's beautiful. You take good care of her." Ethan looked at her then, really looked, at the way her eyes softened when she smiled, how easily she connected with everything around her. Something about it warmed the space between them. As afternoon turned to evening, Maya said she should be leaving. The roads would be dry enough by now. Ethan tried to act calm, but his chest felt heavy. He nodded and helped her pack her things. At the gate, she turned to him and said quietly, "Thank you, Ethan, for taking me in. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't opened the door." He smiled faintly. "You would have found another place, I'm sure." "I don't think so," she said. "Some doors only open once." Before he could answer, she stepped forward and hugged him. It was quick, gentle, but it carried warmth that stayed even after she stepped back. Then she climbed into her car, waved, and drove down the long dirt road. Ethan stood there watching the dust rise behind her until she disappeared from view. When he turned back toward the house, the silence hit him differently. It wasn't the peaceful kind, it was the old, hollow kind again. Inside, everything looked the same, but it felt like something was missing. He found the blanket she had used folded neatly on the couch and her cup still beside the sink. And then he saw it, her scarf hanging on the chair near the fire. She must have forgotten it. He picked it up, holding the soft fabric in his hands. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped days ago, but the memory of her laughter stayed in the air like music that refused to fade. He sat on the porch with the scarf beside him, staring at the stars. The land stretched quiet and endless around him, but now it felt alive, as if something unseen had changed. Days turned into weeks. Life went back to its old rhythm, feeding the horses, repairing fences, hauling hay. But his thoughts kept wandering back to that soaked girl who had appeared out of nowhere. Every morning he looked toward the road, half expecting to see dust rising from a returning car. Every evening he placed her scarf near the window, as if keeping it ready for when she came back. Then one late afternoon, as the sun began to set, a faint sound reached him, the low hum of an engine. Ethan stepped out onto the porch. A car was coming down the long dirt road. His heart beat faster. When it stopped near the gate, the door opened and Maya stepped out. She was smiling, holding a small bag in one hand. "Roads are clear now," she said softly. "Thought I'd return your blanket." Ethan laughed quietly. "You drove all this way just for that?" She shook her head. "Not just for that. I wanted to see the horses again. And maybe learn how to ride one if you'll teach me." For a long moment, Ethan didn't speak. He felt that same warmth in his chest, stronger now. "I reckon I can do that," he said finally. She grinned, her eyes lighting up. Together they walked toward the pasture. Grace lifted her head and neighed softly as if welcoming her back. Ethan showed Maya how to place the saddle, how to hold the reins gently but firmly. She was nervous at first, but soon she was laughing again, her hair catching the golden light of sunset. "See?" Ethan said, smiling. "She trusts you already." "I think I trust her too," Maya replied. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in orange and rose, they walked the horses back toward the barn. Neither spoke much, but the silence between them was easy, full of quiet understanding. When they reached the fence, Maya stopped and looked at him. "You know, Ethan," she said softly, "sometimes people come into our lives when we least expect it. Maybe that's what the storm was for, to lead me here." Ethan looked at her, his voice low. "Maybe it was to remind me that some storms don't destroy. They bring life back." Maya smiled, and the wind caught her hair, brushing it gently across her face. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The sound of the horses, the rustle of grass, the soft breath of evening air. That night, she stayed for dinner. They ate simple food, beans, cornbread, and tea, and laughed over small things. Ethan couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed like that. The house glowed warm with lamplight, shadows dancing softly on the walls. When she finally left again the next morning, she promised to visit soon. And this time, Ethan believed her. After she drove away, he stood on the porch watching the road fade into the horizon, but he didn't feel empty anymore. He turned toward the fields, where the horses moved lazily under the sun, and felt peace settle deep in his chest. The lonely rancher who once believed he would die alone had opened his gate to a stranger, and in doing so, had opened his heart again. Sometimes, he thought, life waits for you to stop expecting before it gives you what you need. And every evening after that, when the sky turned gold and the wind carried the faint scent of rain, Ethan would smile to himself and whisper, "Thank you, storm," because it had brought him not trouble but a reason to live again.